Hello, and happy Halloween. This video is not going to be posted until the Thursday after, but happy Halloween nevertheless. Hope you enjoyed it no matter what you did. Hope the new way of the world didn't negatively impact it too much, though, let's be real, it probably did. So, for today's Let's Talk video, I wanted to talk about one of the biggest aspects of the recent holiday Halloween, trick-or-treating. This is something that probably almost everybody did at one point in their life, or still doing now, depending on their age. Trick-or-treating is, of course, the tradition that most children partake in on Halloween when they dress up in a costume and go around to all their neighboring houses and knock on the door, say the phrase trick-or-treat, and then the person who answers the door will give them candy. And it's a very simple yet fun concept, you know? You just go around, you get free candy, you get to dress up in costume, hang out with friends, in some cases on a school night, you know? And I always really enjoyed it. You know, I've always really enjoyed the prospect of, you know, dressing up in a costume, hanging out with friends also dressed up in costume, and going around and getting free candy. It's a very fun thing to do. I have pretty much made it a priority to dress up for Halloween every year. I do not plan on not dressing up for any upcoming Halloweens. I have a long list of costumes that I've both worn and will wear in the future, so I'm covered in that department. So, in terms of trick-or-treating, I live in a suburban area where houses are relatively close together. It's not a downtown city by any means. We have grass and stuff like that, but houses are very close together, which makes trick-or-treating easier. Other areas, houses may be farther apart, more rural areas. There may be, say, you know, several acres, maybe even a fraction of a mile in between houses, which makes it a lot harder. So I am lucky to live in an area where this is the case. Maybe some of you might live in an area where houses are more spread out, and trick-or-treating in turn is a lot harder. Another thing is, a lot of people have speculated about if certain candy givers or adults who give candy at the door are biased towards certain forms of costume. Because, of course, some people believe the scarier the costume, the more candy it will get, because, you know, that's the idea. You're supposed to dress up as something scary. Not everybody does that, but that is the objective of Halloween, to dress up as something scary. I mean, for me personally, I sometimes dress up as something scary, but other times I just dress up as pretty much whatever. For instance, one year I went as the Scream, which is scary, but another year I went as Cartman from South Park, who isn't inherently scary, but I mean, I guess technically he is, considering he's a threat to society in that show, but, or one year I went as a hippie. Like, hippies aren't scary. They're very, you know, pacifistic group of people, so that's an better example of a non-scary costume I went as one year. Anyways, so, tangent aside, so some people believe that the scarier the costume gets you more candy, but others believe that the cuter the costume gets you more candy, pretty much the opposite direction, which is why some little kids might dress up as something really cutesy and schmaltzy, trying to get more candy because they can, you know, get an awe out of the adult who answers the door, and because they're so adorable, they'll get more candy. Now, the psychology behind this does definitely make sense to me, but I'd say it's a case-by-case basis. I'm sure some adults might actually fall into that sort of trap. Others probably don't care and give the equal amount of candy to every trick-or-treater they see, just, you know, because that's the best way to do it. Of course, pretty much everybody's objective when they go out trick-or-treating is to get as much candy as possible. And dressing up in a scarier or cuter costume is, of course, one method of doing this, but, of course, there are others as well. One of the methods that I never did myself but was very familiar with was when you take a second bag and you say, oh, I have a friend or a sibling who was sick and couldn't come out tonight, so you get an extra bag. That's one that, again, I never did myself, but I know a handful of people who did succeed pretty well in doing that. Then we get to the big one. The famous Help Yourself Bowl. Oh boy, these things were interesting on a number of accounts. So when someone is either not home for Halloween or just doesn't feel like answering the door, like, you know, 30 times in the span of an hour, instead they'll just leave a bowl of candy on the front stoop or porch with a sign that says, please help yourself or take X number, usually between 1 and 3. But obviously, anyone who doesn't have a moral compass at the level of Mother Teresa is going to take more than the allotted amount according to the sign. There have been thousands of occasions across the country, I'm sure, where people either take large handfuls, dump the bowl, even steal the bowl entirely. Take, everything, bowl included. One of my good friends back in middle school, his neighborhood actually stopped doing the help yourself thing entirely. Like, everybody just collectively stopped doing it, because there was one year a bunch of people did it, the help yourself thing, and this one group of people went around not only taking all the candy, but they took the bowls as well. So everybody who put a bowl out not only, lost all that candy to like only a select few trick-or-treaters, but they also lost whatever bowl they put out with it. Excuse me. So, yeah, my neighborhood still did it following that incident. And, of course, when me and my friends would go out and see that, we would go to town. I mean, who wouldn't, And, of course, if the person is in the house, you have to be careful about it. If the lights are off and it's obvious they're not home, you really don't have to mind. A couple stories tailored to that, because, why not? This first one is of mine personally. One time, there was this guy who had this big bowl stocked with full-size candy bars, and I could see through, because the storm door was closed, but the actual front door was open. And there was a big dog sleeping right at the door. Or maybe not sleeping, but just like sitting there resting. And I knew that like any sudden noises and that dog will bark, alerting the homeowners, because right next to the door was the living room window, and I could see through the living room window that there were people in the living room watching TV. So I knew I had to be careful about it. So I very carefully took a large handful and dumped it into my bag, but it wasn't quite enough because the dog started to bark. I up and ran, and while I was running, I heard somebody open the storm door, look at the bowl, and shout after me, "Really, kid? You took half the bowl. What's the matter with you?" So it wasn't really that big of a threat. He was more so probably just mildly annoyed, but still, it was a little scary, nearly getting caught. And I think after that, he shouted something else. I didn't quite hear it, but if I did hear it right, I think he said, like, "You better get back here and, like, give me some of my candy back," or something like that. I don't really remember exactly. And at that point, I was a ways away, so I couldn't really hear him very well. So, but I think that's what he said, but yeah. So there was that occasion. And then the second story I have isn't from me. It's from a friend of mine. I think he was in elementary school when this happened. So what happened was he pretty much had a similar encounter. There was a help yourself bowl right in front of the front door, and again, storm door was closed. The actual door was open, so you have that big pane of glass that's clear and can see right through. So apparently there was a lady in the kitchen. The kitchen was down a hallway from the front door, and he could see the lady in the kitchen doing something. So he started stuffing his bag with the bowl of candy, and then apparently the lady in the kitchen, out of the corner of her eye, sees what he's doing, and she starts briskly walking over to the front door shouting, "Young man!" And then he, of course, was startled. He goes, "Ah!" and then just runs away full speed. So, yeah, again, that was another close call there. And I'm sure things like that happen all the time. I mean, my parents, they pretty much never put out a help yourself bag or help yourself bowl, because they know that probably just one person is just going to come and raid the whole thing. And I mean, I agree with them. It's probably, when you're too lazy to answer your own door, you're pretty much just setting yourself up for that sort of thing. Of course, if you're not home, that's a different story. I mean, there it's kind of an awkward situation and you don't really know what to do, but yeah. Yeah, the famous help yourself bowl, my God, that is one of the most abused systems ever. That's like, it's just, when you think about abused systems in the world, particularly in the United States, though, that is like the first one that comes to my mind, even though it's nothing really that major. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just candy. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, there's that. So, Another thing that I always found interesting about trick-or-treating is the certain houses that have decorations. As some of them, there's like nothing, and some of them go all out. Some of the houses in my neighborhood, you even have to walk through like a small haunted maze in order to actually get to the house. Which I always found that pretty fun, you know, when they go all out for decorations. And then there's some people who, yeah, they have like nothing. And then, of course, you knock on some people's doors and they answer, and they're like, wait, it's Halloween? And they're like, yeah. It's like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. I don't have any candy. It's like, oh, thanks a lot. I remember this one time, I think I was in 3rd grade, I want to say, maybe 2nd grade. But anyways, so I was out trick-or-treating with one of my friends. And we went to this one house, and this lady said, oh, sorry, we don't have any candy. And I was like, oh, well, do you have anything else? And eventually she said, oh, well, we have water. I was like, okay, I mean, I am pretty thirsty. Could you give us some water, please? She's like, okay, sure. So she comes back with these medium-sized plastic cups. It's like, okay, there you go. Happy Halloween. And we were like, thank you. Yeah, because I guess my friend was also pretty thirsty, so yeah. So yeah, I got water from a house on Halloween that year. Pretty funny. But it wasn't that bad because, again, I was decently thirsty, and I actually do see some houses nowadays that do offer out water to trick-or-treaters, like, not instead of candy, but, like, on top of the candy, because, you know, you're walking around so much, and if you're eating candy while you're walking, you're probably going to get pretty thirsty, so some houses do offer out bottles of water on top of candy, which I think is a good thing to do. But speaking of lame candy surrogates, that is a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which of course is the houses that don't give candy, but they give some sort of lame substitute. We all know those people are in our neighborhood, and their house gets egged and teepeed every year. My neighborhood is no different. Of course, you have the person who gives out like pretzels and goldfish instead of candy. Sometimes people give out money, which I never complained about that because I always thought money was pretty cool. You know, you have people that give out like gummy snacks and sometimes even healthy snacks, you know, like I don't really know off the top of my head, maybe like some sort of kale chips or something. But yeah, there are houses that offer that instead, and it's just, why? I mean, I guess there's some sort of nutritionist, or they just, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but there are always those houses that instead of having candy, they have some sort of alternative, and it's just, why do you have that? And then, of course, if you live in the neighborhood of a dentist, now I do not live in the neighborhood of a dentist, but I'm sure that some of you do. If you live in the neighborhood of a dentist, what do you think he's going to give you? Probably toothbrushes. Maybe he'll also give you candy, but he might also give you toothbrushes. Again, I wouldn't really know about that for sure, but you never know. I mean, he's a dentist after all. And like I said, usually those houses of those people fall victim to some sort of pranks, which is another good segue to lead into the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is Halloween pranks, which isn't necessarily related to trick-or-treating, but it can be, as sometimes people do pull pranks on houses that like give them lame candy or something like that. You might, you know, throw some TP around, throw a couple eggs at the house, maybe ding-dong ditch them, something like that. Essentially, it's vandalism. I mean, it's very low-key vandalism because toilet paper and eggs are pretty easy to clean, but nevertheless, it's not a good thing to do, but it can be fun if you're, you know, in your teenage years and you just want to derp around and have fun with friends. One time, my my one neighbors, they weren't home for Halloween, and they just left a note on the door saying, "We're not home, we don't have candy," or something like that. And me and my friends, having the maturity of, I think we were 7th or 8th grade, having the maturity of a 7th or 8th grader, we thought, wow, these guys, they don't have candy. What jerks, how dare they? So we TP'd their front lawn. And I don't believe we ever got caught. My mom one time said something about it, which maybe implies that they did, but like never actually reported us, but I don't know. I mean, I never heard anything about it after that, so. Yeah, but that was a fun time. We just, we didn't throw it over their house because it's like it's like a small house, but it's a really tall house. It's maybe only about 2,000 square feet, or probably less than that, but it's 3 stories high, so it's one of those houses that's not very wide, but like really tall, so we couldn't throw any toilet paper over the house, but we did wrap it around like the columns on the front porch and some of the trees and foliage in the front yard. So that was kind of fun. And then, of course, other pranks involve egging a house, which I have personally never done, and of course ding-dong ditching, which is where you ring the doorbell and run away before the person can answer. And again, some people just target random houses when doing this. Other people, again, they do it to get back at someone who gives them a lame substitute for candy, which is not a good thing to do, but it's also kind of funny. So anyways, that's about all I have to say in terms of trick-or-treating and Halloween in general. So again, hope you all had a good Halloween. Hope you got some candy, got some scares, got in a costume, or something to that effect. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.